Right friends, very good evening to all of you. My name is Praveen Agarwal. Few people call me fondly as Meraqee Praveen. During my recent trip to Ladakh, where we took 3 of us friends went for a road trip, what we discovered in 15 days was complete solace. It was a journey within, a journey which cannot be described over words, which cannot be described as feelings. But there's a lot of peace, there's a lot of faith in each other, and the journey was completely fruitful. We have driven to the highest peak of Ladakh, and the entire journey was very fruitful. This we did in 15 days, covering about 2,500 kilometers. But imagine if someone who has traveled for 51 days, covering 18,181 kilometers, what kind of insight about our country, about our demography she would bring to the table. Yes friends, I'm talking about my YI clan, Bhairavi Jani. Bhairavi, can I have a standing applause for you, please? So that kind of story what we bring to all of you through Stories by Meraqee. Now what is Meraqee? Meraqee, as simple as that, something which you do with your heart and soul is Meraqee. It could be baking at home, or recently I made curry for the first time in my house, and that was a Meraqee moment for me. So that is Meraqee for all of us. And that's what kind of stories, workshops, travels we want to weave through Stories by Meraqee. Friends, I have a pleasure to introduce Bhairavi, but before that, can I request for the video, please, of Stories by Meraqee? Thank you. So friends, these are the 12 life sutras I have been living for the last couple of years, and I see a lot of merit in this. In this whole scenario of life living, we tend to forget the essence of life, the purpose of life. So through Meraqee, we would like to bring that essence back in our life. I know I'm talking in front of you in a wrong space, because this space talks about innovation, this talks space about startups, and yes, there's a lot of things are happening in T-Hub. In 2014, when Bhairavi Jani got into a car with 3 of our friends and drove 18,181 kilometers from India, across India, from the remote districts of Nagaland to the villages of Rann of Kutch, and from the Kashmir Valley to the interiors of India, Deccan, she was searching for the thread that weave our country. Friends, what she discovered from the many highways she took to Swades, from the beating heart of this book, Highway to Swades. Bhairavi is an avid traveler. She is a trained classical dancer and a passionate about arts. She is the World Economic Forum's young global leader and has been listed among India's top 25 power women by India Today. Bhairavi, for you. Now this is a very challenging task for me to introduce a great man. I mean, off the record, I had a pleasure to speak to him a couple of times. And on one such occasion, when I was talking to him about mountains, his insight about mountains, though he has not been to mountains, and I have been to Everest Base Camp, but his insights about mountains, the challenges a mountaineer face, was much more deeper than I had. So that's a respect I have for Mr. MSR, the CEO for T-Hub, which enables and empowers an ecosystem which is highly for innovation, and he is an accomplished serial entrepreneur. MSR has built a social business across geographies over his 33 years stint in IT. MSR is a native of Telangana and currently lives in Hyderabad. He holds an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, and a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from OU University. He is a cricket fanatic and enjoys quizzing. He and his wife, a special educator, and a proud parents of 2 daughters. May I request MSR, please. Also, can you play the video which talks a little bit more about Bhairavi, please? Thank you.
I have travelled to the length and breadth of our beautiful country. From the valleys of Kashmir to the interiors of India's Deccan, all the way to Kanyakumari. And from the Rann of Kutch to Kohima in Nagaland. I have met thousands of people and seen hundreds of cultures. All these experiences stirred something inside my heart, and I decided to write Highway to Swades.
So good evening everybody. I've known Bhairavi now for close to
टेबल पे लगा दूँ
No more.
and amazing. I'm actually meeting her in the flesh probably for the first or second time.
First time.
First time, yeah. But no, we lived in, we worked through the pandemic, saw each other on multiple Zoom, Google Meet, Teams calls, but it's wonderful to meet her in person. Right? I think the introduction by Ravi doesn't do her justice because there's so many facets of her life we need to talk about, including the fact that apart from being a Bharatanatyam dancer, she's also a pianist. Okay, she's now an author. She has built multiple businesses. She runs a very successful foundation called IEF, the India Entrepreneurship Foundation. And if Nagaland could have an unofficial ambassador, she'd be. So my pleasure and privilege to be able to talk to Bhairavi. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I read the book end to end. It is one of the, I would put it in the top 5 of the most thought-provoking books I've read. I can kind of tell you some of the books which I have read and why. So the book which has had the most profound influence on me is a book called Man's Search for Meaning, Victor Frankl. The second is My Experiments with Truth. Third is Rediscovering India. And I think what you've written is somewhere in that way. And I'm not trying to flatter you. I genuinely believe that you can see I was telling Bhairavi just now, 5 minutes ago, that I think one thing we have in common is we are hugely optimistic about India as a country. And maybe I'll just start with a quote. About 126 years ago, there was a chap called Mark Twain. So, all of you would have read about Mark Twain. It would be in your English, must have been something in one of the English courses. So, Mark Twain did a 3-month similar trip. Of course, he didn't have the opportunity of flying because this was back in 1896. And he travelled between January to April 1896 across India and he wrote 2 books. And I'm going to start with a quote which he said. He said, "Nothing has been left undone, either by man or nature, to make India the most extraordinary country that the sun visits on its own. Nothing seems to have been forgotten, nothing seems to have been overlooked." So, and I think I'll start with that because I think when we talked about your 18,181 kilometer expedition, you started in Chennai and you finished in Mahankali. Right? So, first we should start with talk us through the motivation for the journey. And also tell us a little bit about the three others who were with you on the road.
So, in 2014, February, I was thinking that, the general elections are coming and there's going to be a lot of stark choices that the country is going to be, sort of putting out. Narendra Modi just put his pitch. And I was in a zone where I was trying to figure out what really drives Indians to make certain choices. And also that I had just finished some work a year or so ago. I used to be full-time CEO at India at 75 Foundation. We are at India at 75 now. And there was a lot of time, conversations during that time with people, especially consultations with people. People would say our government doesn't understand us. Inside the government, there would be this conversation that, we have all the right intention. Why is it that people are not catching on to some program? And, it's places like this where those dots connect, at T-Hub. So thank you, first of all, for having us here. I don't even feel that I have not met you. That's the beauty of how much time and the quality of the conversations we have had, even though it was during the pandemic, and I think they were very challenging times. I think it was those questions that I went to then to a friend of mine who has been a traveler and an Indologist for a very, very long time. And his name is Mahesh. So Mahesh is based out of Chennai, and he works with large corporate as well as universities across the world to look at India as a grassroots condition and now the whole of global south for innovation, acceleration. And obviously he's a big believer in India, big believer in the story of India. And he had a friend who was a rally driver, who was an entrepreneur. He started as a toilet cleaner of a cinema house in Chennai, made South India's largest facility servicing company. But it was very clear that at 40 he was going to quit all of that because his passion was motorsport. So that's AGK Uma Mahesh, who is also dedicated to him because AG passed away whilst I was writing the book. And he was also Deputy Secretary for Formula 1 India. He was a curator for Asia and Bimstack Rally. So every traveler is good fellow. And then there was Venkatesh Nagarajan, who was our cinematographer, who had never left Tamil Nadu in his life. So he was these three crazy travelers who had been all around and who had done all kinds of crazy things. And it really helped that somebody who had never traveled was actually capturing everything. Because he captured things even we wouldn't, because it was. So we were three of us. And I'm going to actually, if you permit me, I'm going to read what Mahesh wrote right at the beginning about why we decided to do this, because I think he says it better than me. If there was something common that ancient chroniclers like Foshan in 4th century CE, Yuan in 7th century CE, Ibn Battuta in 14th century CE, and Durand Barbosa in 16th century CE, and of course Mark Twain in 1896, took away from India, it was capturing the magnificence of this country in a single canvas with two distinct endpoints, the start date and the end date of their journey. Their canvases were some of those precious gifts that our generation has inherited, because they were end-to-end documentation of India's vast ethnographic profile with vivid descriptions of its geography and social order in a specific time period. And it was this inspiration to cover India in a set of dates during the general election of 2020 that got us on the road.
Thank you, Bhairavi. So I'm going to ask you a very tactical question. Who did the navigation? Who did the route planning? Who did the navigation?
There's a very nice backstory to this. So, my dear friend Mahesh is very unique. Like all people are, but he's a little more unique than unique. And he brought a map book on the travel, which was 20 years old because he was sentimental about it. So we soon realized that we couldn't use it to map the travel. Google wasn't as effective, so after some point it was, as they say, Ram said. And we hadn't even thought how we wanted to go around. So we only knew, and I have my friends here, my colleagues from Rajat factory, I sit on their board. And we knew we were going to go to Tirupati because they were located there. So, and we knew we were going to go to Guntur from there because our friend Jaidev Galla was fighting his first Lok Sabha election. So we only knew up to Guntur. We didn't know anything beyond. So I think we sat down in Guntur finally and said, okay, now where are we going? What are we doing? So it just kept happening. For some time we followed a route that we knew, like we wanted to travel through the eastern Ghats and then along the eastern coast to the northeast, and both NG, Mahesh and even myself spent a lot of time in the northeast, so we were very comfortable with the territory. But then at some stage we decided to take help of a guy called H.D. Kumar. He used to be a full-on corporate guy, then quit to become the Highway Kumar of India. He runs his Facebook page called Highway Kumar. And he knew HG very well. And so H.V. Kumar gave us a lot of interesting navigation, like driving along the Bhutan border from Siliguri to go to Guwahati instead of the regular road, or driving from Jaisalmer to Dholavira through the Rann of Kutch and not actually through the highway. So he gave us a lot of interesting navigation that made us meet interesting people and see amazing sights which were very, very rare. And of course, then we also got lost. And so there were people of India who also took us along, say, oh, you three poor souls, everybody saw this Tamil Nadu plate and said, you need help, we'll take you to the other side. So, people just took us from one place to the other saying, okay, you should go and see this, so you should try looking at this, have you seen this in our state? And so that's how the navigation happened. Pretty random.
I think there's another good way to know that. Yeah? Okay. When we talk about India at 75, right? I think there's another Mark Twain quote, which is not probably as well known. He said, one thing which is, of everything which is true in India, the opposite is also true. Right? So we are a country of contradictions, if you will, right? And you talk in the beginning of the book about, essentially, and I think Praveen referred to it, about search for identity. Right? What is it that binds this country, 32 lakh square kilometers, 1.3, 1.4 billion people, 22 languages, and maybe 800 plus dialects, etc. Because every 100 kilometers, everything changes. Food, culture, language, type of work which gets done, etc. So tell us a little bit about what you were trying to, what were you searching for?
So actually, 19,500 mother tongues are spoken in this country. It's crazy. And what I was trying to search for was that how does it all stay together? Why doesn't it fall apart? I've done a lot of work in Kashmir, I've done a lot of work in Nagaland. I know that there have been secessionist forces in those places, and why have they not succeeded also? It's because I was searching for that. That was one thing, but more than that, I was really searching for that. Listen, we all know what it was to be an Indian in the 15th century, and we have this imagination of what it will be in the 30th century. But what about now? What is it in the 21st century? What does it mean to be an Indian? What is that articulation? And I believe nobody has articulated that. That what does it mean to be an Indian now? Not of the past, not of the future, but now. And I was searching for that, and I found it.
You found it?
I found it.
Okay, fine. So I think you start with the trip on the Ganges, right?
Yes.
That's the beginning of the book. You go river rafting, right? Tell us about that.
So it started.
And what did you take away from that?
Yes, it started in 2004. when I was very young, I was not even 25. And we were all part of a team that started an organization called Young Indians, which was youth league of CII. Mahesh, I met through YI. My dear friend Sudha, whose son is here today, my closest friend, I think, person closest to me after my parents. I met her through YI. And many other friends, I mean, people know here, Sanjay Reddy, and Jay, and they're all part of this 30 people who started an organization. They had gone there to sort of brainstorm on how do we involve more and more young people to join an organization like YI, and Praveen is also from YI, who are involved in constructively contributing to India's development dissolution, individually and collectively as peers. So we had gone there to brainstorm. It was like a retreat, and we were all on the Ganga. And after the first day of rafting, which was, the book of course describes it pretty vividly. All kinds of things happen on rafting trips. You fall off, and the raft goes over. So many things happen. It's an adventure, of course. And the night before that, Sudha, me, and Mahesh were talking actually about how can we get more and more young people to contribute to the country, what is easy, what is not easy. And I was really, before I went up to sleep that night, this question came to my mind, that what does it mean to be an Indian? And at that point in time, when I was 24, I felt my relationship with my country was in a state of huge turmoil. I wasn't sure, I was probably proud of it from a civilization perspective, but looking at its politics and economics, I wasn't very proud. So I was struggling with my identity, and that's where it came from. And I think all young people do struggle with their identity, and I was no exception. The next day's rafting trip, when it ended, I finally kind of thought about it and got the idea, which kind of forms the center core of this book, that I felt like the civilization of India was like the Ganga, eternally flowing across time, whereas the Republic was like the raft, right? And all of us who were on the raft and rafting, we had to pick up our oars, we had to make sure everybody stays on board. Sometimes there would be challenging rapids, sometimes you would get sides, but you have to get yourself, sometimes somebody will follow you to rescue that person, and eventually reach safely as a team together. So I felt the Republic of India was like a raft, which needed people, us the people, to pick up the oars and raft the Republic in the flow of the civilization. So it kind of connected that dot for me. And I think after that trip, I kind of decided that I wanted to actually understand the country better. I mean, I had traveled a lot in my childhood because of the business of the family, but it was very, very different when I started traveling for YI, and I started traveling in travels like this, where there was a specific purpose was only to experience, as Praveen was talking about, not just to experience what is out there in this country. And I think at some point the tourist became the traveler and the traveler became the explorer. And that's been the journey over the last 20 years.
Okay, so I think one point you make in the book, right, is about how is it that for millennia, right, India as a civilization has not been. We've had waves of invasion, starting from 700 and even before that, and all the way to 1947 and whatever. You talk about something which has kept us together, and I think you use the word superpowers, right? Which is what kind of the glue which is keeping us together, right? So we are like a fractious family, if you will, right? We have differences of opinion. I think we're probably the most opinionated country in the world. Everyone has an opinion, and we exercise it every 5 years, and so on. But you talk about the superpowers, right? So tell us a little bit about when you say there is something called a superpower. So what are the 3-4 things which actually constitute a superpower?
So we are our own Marvel universe as a country, literally, and that's the way I looked at it. That these are these 12 powers that people have, And when I say, the reason I did not use the word strengths or, I don't know, skills or anything, but I use the word superpower, because these are not something that most Indians would have cultivated. They're just born with it. Just like heroes, superheroes are born with their own superpowers. I think Indians are just inherently born with it and raised in it. So you don't understand it's a superpower till somebody points it out to you, like, you tell Hanuman that you will Shakti types.
You don't know your own strengths.
You don't know your own strengths. And I think because they've been passed on for so many generations, and they are so seated and pervasive, we don't step back and we don't look at it and we don't say that, oh, this is our strength, this is our superpower. And I thought it was important to give voice to that these are the 12 superpowers that we share, and we forget about, can India be a superpower or not. I think those are all conversations in vain. Not because India cannot be a superpower, but I don't even think such ideas can exist in a multipolar world. But the fact that we all have our superpowers as people of India, therefore collectively as a nation we have these superpowers, needed a voice and needed an articulation.
I'm going to take more verbatim from the book. Each superpower is a shared idea, a shared value system, and a shared aspiration. Right? And I think the next line which follows, right, is if applied judiciously to policy frameworks and implementation, these superpowers have the potential to transform the future course of India. Right? This line just shook me up because I had to think, what are we missing? Right? It seems obvious when we read the book, but somehow I think we struggled. I think it's like in many businesses, you have great strategy, but poor execution. Right? And execution without strategy doesn't work, and strategy without execution doesn't work. Right? So that I'm trying to convert in the context of the business. Right? So let's quickly start with, I think, the first one, the first chapter, first superpower itself, the super grid. Right? Because it's something which at least folks in T-Hub will relate to, which is the power of the enterprise. Right? So just talk us a little bit about that. And I really liked I'm sure she'll talk a little bit about Autarkta Bharat, Bollywood, and Pahle India. Right? I really like that, the framing. But just talk us about the first superpower, which is the power of enterprise.
So I think it's, if I told people 10 years ago about entrepreneurship and startup in this country, when we started the idea of entrepreneurship, people would have laughed at me. But today, of course, everybody, there is this whole startup wave and entrepreneurship wave. But, the chapter actually talks about the fact that what are we doing with this power of enterprise? I mean, you're doing so much here at this place, at T-Hub. Judiciously applying that power with policy, infrastructure, system to take it forward, to give it meaning. But this is an exception in the country. The power of enterprise is everywhere. And before this trip, I used to be in a mindset thinking that entrepreneurship is about tech companies and startups and businesses and businesses and markets. And then on the drive, while driving from Araku in Eastern Ghats to Koraput and Orissa through the forest, we met tribes. We met the Bhuya, Karoja and Gond tribes and Kora tribe also in Araku. And tribal societies have these market days. So there was this market day going on. We stopped by and women, people had come from the forest on these, tribe sort of three-wheelers and two-wheelers and buses and back to the brim, and then they would come out and under this beautiful bright tarpaulin a market day was going on. And there were these women selling everything from beads to forest produce. And if you really observe them very, very closely, very fine entrepreneurs. Because somewhere around midday, I would say mid-afternoon, when the market day ended, those women had sold everything. So to me, as an entrepreneur, the proof is in the pudding, right? Like what happened? Did the sale happen? Sale happened. They left with no inventory back. But when I asked them about entrepreneurship, they didn't know. There's a concept so alien to them. But at that point in time, I think I realized that I myself watched entrepreneurship as something that was about running businesses, running industry, running startups. Whereas entrepreneurship is something much bigger. It is an ability to solve problems, ability to create self-reliance, and these women were doing it brilliantly. And so my landscape and my vision about who I call an entrepreneur has significantly transformed. To me, even a street vendor is an entrepreneur. And so therefore then the question comes that, what are we doing? Because we may be doing something for tech entrepreneurs and innovation entrepreneurs here, or we may be doing something through ease of doing business for industries. But what are we doing for a street vendor? What are we doing for a Bhumya Paroja gone tribe? She's enterprising. Have we done enough? Have we thought through enough? And that's the question, central question I'm asking, that what kind of entrepreneurship we want in the country. And in that context, I'm talking about the three scenarios. And so in 2005, the World Economic Forum conducted, along with Confederation of the Indian Industry, the scenario exercise, which I came to learn about when I was working with the India 75 Foundation, about the future scenarios for India in 2025. Three scenarios came up. One was kind of a very bleak scenario. I won't give the spoilers, it's in the book. It was called Bollywood. But it was, what income inequality you see today, the pain that you see today, the rise of violence we see today, crime we see today, comes from that scenario. Then there was a second scenario which was called Bhairavi, and it was about the fact that, these years, right, almost 8 to 9 years of GSTs coming, not coming, that happened. Such scenario.
The rate of growth.
The Hindu rate of growth, correct. And then of course the scenario of Pehle India, which and they were very smart. They had these imageries assigned to each one of these scenarios. And for the Pehle India scenario, it was an imagery of thousands of fireflies rising in the sky in the evening on a village landscape, right? And it was about that, when it's individual enterprise of people will be unleashed, that an India first approach will happen in the country. And that's what that scenario talked about. And in the chapter, I am exploring how can Pehle India happen? How can we ensure that scenario has a higher probability of transpiring for us as people versus the other two. So that's what I'm exploring in that chapter.
So you talk about, I think you cover a little bit about communism, capitalism, and then you use this very interesting thing called stakeholder capital.
That's right.
So just tell us a little bit about stakeholder capital.
So it's a term that was coined by Klaus Schwab, the executive chairman and founder of the World Economic Forum. And stakeholder capitalism literally means that capitalism that is interested in not just shareholders who are investors in a company, but stakeholders, which means the society, the planet, and the whole ecosystem that is home to the business. And he talks about the fact that in the time to come, it will be stakeholder capitalism that will deliver growth for businesses versus shareholder capitalism. Because a business no more can afford to think only about its profit. It has to think about society, sustainable development, inclusion, and taking the ecosystem in which it operates along. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So we want to break up this, otherwise Bhairavi and all can keep talking.
Correct.
Right? So I'm going to, at this point, if there's anybody has a question about the first superpower, which is about entrepreneurship. Happy to take it right now.
Anyone?
Anyone?
Even a comment is fine. Submit.
Hi. So my name is Sai Kumar. So I'm not an accountant. And when I was young, my parents called me over because I was a citizen of India and I old India. So when I was able to come to India, so my friends, if I want to join India, and they said it's about India, so they're not interested in things. So my question is something like, yes, there's a superpower, yes, there's potential for India to do, but until and unless if we commercialize and take it to the market, whatever we are saying, the tribal things, so India we have very different food culture. Sometimes we talk about Italian, Spanish, Mexican, but just in Telangana, every 50 kilometers, there are different kinds of food. So, I mean, yes, the thoughts and intentions are there, but how to make it into the market? How exactly can we bring back the things which we are selling?
Yeah, I got this question, but that's the stuff you know. What will I answer that question? I mean,
So we can talk about obviously the power of food and all that.
yes. No, I think it's a very good question. As I said, what I loved about those travel reviews, they were able to sell that stuff. So there is an economic outcome for their enterprise. But I would only say one thing, that if that's an idea you have, that there is food different every 150 kilometers, today you have enough to curate it, offer it, design supply chain around it. I mean, you'll have to build the different pieces that make something and take it to the market. Do you want to, then you have to ask this question, what is the value you are adding? Because if you're not adding any value, then you won't survive. The tribal women are adding value. You and I are not going to go inside the forest and harvest that produce. They're adding that value, right? So what is the value you're going to add? If you're going to add some value, then market will compensate you for it. If you're not adding value, market will bypass you and eventually go to the source and will not compensate you for it. It's as simple and straightforward as that. It's a logical business. So if you really want all that food to reach the market, then you have to start thinking of a venture that kind of curates that, ties that, bring in a platform to that. I don't know how you want to do it. I can't tell you how to run your show. But then you have to think of supply chain, you have to think of quality control, and I think you have to think of so many other things. You have to think of brand venture where he takes spices and honey from really remote corners of Himalaya and sends it to the whole world. So it is possible.
Thank you. Let's move on to the second superpower. Okay? We talk about the power of nature. And this was a chapter which I really studied. And I tell you, we revere nature, right? But we are doing our best to restore. Right? So this was the chapter which I think was the most, almost heart-wrenching to read what we are doing. So let's just talk us a little bit about, first of all, when we talk about meeting members and the communities. Talk us a little bit through that, and then talk us through, I think there's also a certain call for action around this. So talk us through.
No, many years ago I took a trip to Ladakh and, of course, probably you went now, but I went in the peak of winter. And you may ask, why would someone at the peak of winter in early December go to Ladakh? I was going there because these friends were my host in May. They had insisted that I must come and see how the Changpa people live and how do they migrate during winter. They are semi-nomadic. They live on a plateau called Changthang. It is the Ladakhi agent of the Tibetan plateau. They are a scheduled tribe of India. And they speak a kind of a mixed language called Chanishta. But basically they are nomadic in the sense that they live a pastoral life, it's their animals, so yak and sheep especially use meat and milk and pashmina wool is what they sell. So I remember landing in first week of December in May at 9 in the morning, it was minus 50 degrees Celsius. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to myself. Then after 2 days of acclimatization, we drove about 120, 130 kilometers to the south, and which is where you have the Champat Cold Wildlife Sanctuary. It is a 4,000 square kilometer wildlife sanctuary. I suggest that if you're brave, please go. Even if you go in summer, it's worth it. Beautiful landscapes, beautiful lakes, just gorgeous. If you like nature, then I would suggest you go. But this was the winter and everything was of course covered in snow. We landed up with the Champa and they felt sorry for us because we were carrying this, this decathlon kind of tents, and they said, you're not surviving. It drops to -50 at night. So they took us into their hut where yak dung was burning and there was a fire, and they gave us some warm tea and food and stayed with them. And then the next morning we stepped out and you could see clouds on the horizon, and I saw the man sort of recite a little prayer. Apparently Champas have prayers for everything. Less rain, more rain, less snow, more snow, good sunlight, better this. And I was like, the reverence for nature was so huge in there. And my host told me that it's going to snow, and therefore you're going to definitely see a winter migration of the Champa. And that night, before the migration, I was sitting and asking this question, which was of course only translated. And this matriarch of the family, she went out in that cold, got a little bit of snow, and put her prayer beads and snow in my hand and folded my hand and said, see, nature was here before man, it will be here after man. Because it is divine. And when we live life ordained by divine, we seldom go wrong. And I was left flabbergasted because all I was asking them, now this modern thing, why do you live like this? There's no need for you to live like this. And they were so sorted in their relationship with their natural world. Right or wrong, no judgment here. But they were sorted in their relationship with their natural world. And that fascinated me. The next morning, as the migration prepared, you imagine a landscape barren, it's all whitewashed because it's a cold desert and there's just snow, so it's all whitewashed. And the Champa family start taking out the animals from the pens. And first there is a human and a yak, and then sheep follow. There's a dog right at the end. And in numbers as large as 10,000, not small, not talking 50 sheep and 100 sheep. 10,000 plus, the families moved one by one. And there was the snow and there was wind, and they were moving to the next meadow where there would be more grass available. I did not see, if any one of us had to experience that, you would have all this anxiety, what if we snow, what if we don't reach, what will happen, all these animals. I did not sense even this much anxiety. And that's when it was very clear to me that what she told me the night before was not just some belief system, it was actually their way of life. And then when I went and saw the communities around the country, the Khasis in Meghalaya who protect their forests and sacred groves, the Bishnokis in Rajasthan who die for it, I realized that traditionally as people we had very strong bonds with our natural world. And that bond was of reverence and high regard. That is why we worship a lot of natural elements even today in this country. Fishermen will worship the sea before going out fishing. And there's a reason for that. And we celebrate seasons and we have gods and goddesses that have their favorite flowers. And the natural world is very integral to our way of thinking. This anthropocentric thinking is new. It was brought by the British. Because the British came to colonize and plunder. Let's not forget that. And so they looked at our forests as resources, as revenue to cut timber away and take away, cut old forests and take away. You see that in the Himalaya, where the British have cut the old biodiverse forests and replanted the invasive pine species. That is what is causing forest fires and change the whole ecosystem for our Himalayan villages. So you see that, and you go back and you look at the laws, and you you ask yourself that yes, okay, the British of course made the laws for forest from a revenue perspective. So it was all about forest revenue. What can you extract from the natural world? But now they've left enough years. If we are still doing the same thing, something wrong. So we have to change that. And the population of 140 billion and a land mass of only 2.8% of the planet, we don't have a choice in this. We will have to figure a more nature positive, nature based approach to our development as a country for us to make sure that there is climate justice. Otherwise, you will have poor who will suffer from water scarcity, poor who will suffer from floods, from drought to start with, but then it will keep getting accelerated. There will be landslides, there will be extreme weather conditions, you already seen them.
So what can each one of the people here as individuals do?
So that's what the chapter ends with, right? It ends with the story of this girl called Mukti Datta who came back from Oxford and Kumar and fought in late 1980s to get the forest around which she was staying declared as a wildlife sanctuary. Today it's a wildlife sanctuary. And it's interesting when you go from Almora up to Windsor, there is this monoculture of pine trees, but as you enter the Windsor Wildlife Sanctuary, all the biodiverse oak and rhododendron and birch and the trees come back. And this one girl, she struggled for it and she worked for it. And so what I think the three things we all can do. One, we must have these conversations at our home. Climate change is a reality. We must converse about it. We must make sure that our children are prepared for it. But more importantly, our children are empowered to do something about it. Which means we must engage the education system not just to inform. Today I believe the education system does the job of information and awareness. And obviously at certain level of advocacy and agitation that happens. That is why you have this Fridays for climate movements and things like that. But somewhere you have to start working on the solutions. Circular economic businesses, recycling of waste, tech is a big part of it. Looking at how do we reformat agriculture because agriculture adds significant amount of greenhouse emissions. How do we, as a country with the largest number of livestock in the world, how do we make sure that is mitigated and changed and reused? And at the same time, how do we really make sure that we bring back the idea that we are an integral part of nature and the natural world and not on top of some pyramid. And I think that conversation must happen.
Leave the world in a better place.
And talk about it and empower our young people to do something about it.
Sure. So let's move on to the third one. Are we doing on time or are we doing okay on time? 15 minutes more? Okay, so we'll have to do it. Okay. You talk about the power of heritage. And Hampi, the heritage mile in Bombay. Then you talk about Nokoti, which I learned about for the first time. And you also talk about how you are screwing up Jason. And then you talk about this remarkable guy called Rajat.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the power of heritage and what as.
I think as simply as put it, coming and taking the conversation from climate forward, which is that in the climate context, you use the word intergenerational equity, which is that whatever we have inherited in terms of the planet, we should pass it on to the next generation. It is the same with heritage. I mean, we are sitting here surrounded by all these beautiful boulders. They are 65 to 69 million years old. They come from a supercontinent called Nagaland. Right? We're sitting on heritage, sitting amongst heritage. So heritage, like climate, is intergenerational equity. It needs to be passed on from one generation to the other. It needs to be protected. It needs to be enjoyed and brought back in modern use. Because only when a heritage becomes an anchor in the modern times, that it will survive. And for that to happen, the community that has inherited that piece of heritage, whether it's a monument, whether it's something, that is a structural art, then that community actually has to become the anchor for that monument. The monument then becomes an anchor for that that heritage should be passed on to the next generation. And I think it's very important because that way our children will always know where they came from. It's a very important thing.
I will come back to your question on this whole thing around community. I think as the chapters go by, we talk a lot about it. We'll come back on that. But let's talk about, we are in a hub of innovation and creativity. And you talk about the power of creativity.
Yeah. I think Indians are one of the most creative ways I have found, from painting a house to doing a little sort of a rangoli or a kolam, or it's the way we say. I mean, look at the number of videos and the kind of creative content we are creating outside. And I'm very happy to know that you're going to start something that's going to have a lot of visual arts and sort of animation, because I think creativity is one skill that sets us apart from the machines.
You talk about Annapurna, Annadata, and then you talk about a very interesting company called Go, and then you talk about reimagining the food system, right? So share.
So I think we have to leave some data points on the table for the first time. India has the second largest arable land in the world. It is in the top 5 producers of 80% of crops, including fruits and vegetables, in the world. And yet 1,500 children die in India every day because of hunger and malnourishment. In terms of hunger and nutrition index, we are one of the lowest in the world. We have, I think, 30% of our population is stunted, malnourished. Shame on us. God's given us this land, this weather, the ability to grow things, and all we are doing is messing it up. Why? Not just that, the guys who are growing also are remaining poor. So the farmer has only become worse off in the economic ladder than getting better off. So what's missing? I mean, the question is that if we value food so much, I mean, any house you go, right? If you go as a guest, you'll be fed and sent home, right? Indians only express love through food. So food is everywhere. We carry food with us everywhere we go. So food is so close to us. We revere it so much. We like it so much. We are obsessed about it. We have an arable land. We grow so much. Then why are people dying of hunger and malnourishment? And I think it's because we have not thought of food as an ecosystem. I think it's important for us to think of food not separate from farmer income, not separate from climate, not separate from nutrition. Because we only address all of this in piecemeal. So when we go to fix one, we mess up the other one. We should not do that. That's what the chapter is about, that we need to look at food as an ecosystem. And that story of that young entrepreneur from Kota in Rajasthan is a story where how he has connected the dots of the food ecosystem. Nothing in his farm is a waste, right? Including cow dung. So he's taken cow dung, dried them, made them cakes. He puts them in a 10-pack thing and sells it on Amazon for havans online, right? Because he says, how will urban people get cow dung for havan at home? So he puts them in a 10-pack and sells it. So nothing was wasted in his farm. And I think we used to traditionally be like that in our farms, and we've forgotten that. And we need to go back to it.
I think that's the one part of the book where I felt you were borderline cynical. Okay. That's about how is it that we keep our homes clean.
Yeah.
Right? All our homes are spick and span and neat, but when we step out, we are just completely disengaged.
Yeah.
So
actually Albert Bandura, who taught at Stanford, came up with this term called moral disengagement. And I think it was he talks about the fact that when we've convinced ourselves fully that to do wrong is actually ethically correct, we will just continue to do wrong. And I think Gandhi was right when he asked us this question that, please tell me, are the temples going to be clean after the British have left? Because I think we have morally disengaged ourselves using caste, using social structure, using it's the government's job, somebody's job. No, it's not. It's our job. Nobody's going to come and clean up your stuff. You'll have to clean it up. I think that collective disengagement we have come up with, the only way it can be countered, and there have been some good success stories that I talk about in the chapter.
Indore and so on.
Indore and Mollingnong, and also the Delhi street art and the ugly Indian from Bangalore, where if you bring back the aesthetics and beauty, so the central argument in the chapter is, should Swachh Bharat Abhiyan be actually Khubsurat Bharat Abhiyan? Will there be more traction because people naturally respond to beauty and aesthetics? Everybody would want their city to be the most beautiful. Clean tells me I'm dirty, but beauty tells me, oh, I can be there. And I think there have been campaigns like Incredible India and all that have done so well. So we can try that, because obviously it's 8 years, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, and we haven't gone anywhere yet.
Okay. Next up, you talk about the power of wellness, right? And you start with a story from one of my other favorite books, K.J. Collins,
Yes.
The Cycle.
Yes.
I don't know how many of you people of a certain generation would have seen this movie called Tere Mere Sapne. Anyone here seen it?
Anyone here seen Tere Mere Sapne? Yeah. Some
people of a certain generation would have seen it.
yeah.
And,
I saw it because my grandparents were watching it. Just to clear that, since you said generation, I'm just making it clear.
And you talk about, you make a very, you make a distinction between health and wellness.
Yes.
Right, in that chapter. So will you just talk us through a little bit about it?
Just in one sentence, I think as long as we focus on health as a disease cure mechanism, we're going to be constantly struggling. Our population size is way too much. We'll never have enough beds. We'll never have enough doctors. But if we bring the lens of public wellness, which is preventive healthcare, of which we have a lot of traditional science which can be married with modern medicine, if we do that, then we need to think of a public wellness delivery system and not a public healthcare delivery system. Once we change that perspective, the way we will approach well-being of our people will change. You cannot be so low in health index in the world. It's the largest, second largest populated country in the world, will be the largest by 2050. Its people can't be unhealthy, can't be unwell. And I think that's the shift that we need to bring, so that we focus on the wellness of the people and not have a disease control mindset.
Prevention is better than cure.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Then I think you talk about the power of assimilation, and you talk about globalization and so on. Right? Again, very fascinating. And again, I think the one thing which I tell you folks, I'm plugging for the book for the simple reason. What I really like is the way she connects the dots, right? In terms of bringing disparate stories together. This was another fascinating chapter, the power of assimilation.
I just think India is like this alchemist. I told you, everywhere I went, people were so open and people were so welcoming. We assimilate everything. Look at the paneer topping on pizza, and look at the cheese dosa, and look at the Indian Chinese. It's all examples of that. If you see around, you will see so much assimilation. And you can only do assimilation going to the next chapter, which is that only when you are an inclusive society. When you accept everything is when you can play with it, right? If you're not willing to accept only, there is a question of, intermingling with it. So I think assimilation was more about sort of saying, if we are so good and so open and, we deal with the world with a sense of trust and openness, even after 400 years of colonialism, then kudos to us. And, why should therefore we must not think of how the smallest Indian can participate in global trade. And what does that look like? So that's what it is about. But at the heart of it, going to the next chapter, is the fact that you need to be inclusive as a society to even assimilate in the first place.
So with all, I'm not sure, because I don't want to get into politically sensitive areas, so I pass that. So you're talking about the power of inclusion, and I think there's a nice story about Hyderabad,
Yes.
which I think for the benefit of our
Yes, of
Hyderabadi
course.
audience.
I had a friend here, Ayesha Beg, and it was her wedding, and we went to the Chata Bazaar, because obviously the calligraphy, right, and it was her wedding invites. And I I didn't know, I mean, how many bazaars Hyderabad had. And so I told her, I said, oh, look at this, all these people, and you know, it's so nice, all different type of people I see here. And she said, boss, if you haven't seen bazaars of Hyderabad, you haven't seen anything in life. So her wedding was 7 days away, but for the next 3 days we went visiting different bazaars of Hyderabad. Went to the Lard Bazaar, and you know, there she kind of showed me how intermingled the culture of the city was, where it was effortless. You know, the Muslims and the Hindus and people of many different faiths were existing without any effort. See, you see effort in other places. There was no effort here. This is just normal. You know, yesterday we were at Paradise Biryani here in High-Tech City, and you know, you had all kinds of community members. You know, there were women in Burkhan, and there were Christians, and there were Hindus, and everybody was eating together. And I think Hyderabad does this with such ease, and that is the reason you're also able to attract so much of talent from everywhere as a city, because you're just open and you're inclusive, and it's not an effort here. You know, you can just be whoever you are, and you'll intermingle in everything. And you know, I think that's a strength this place has.
Sure. So the next one you talk about is the power of the individual.
Yes.
Right? And again, the point which I think got me really thinking there was, how do you balance individual rights and group rights? Right? So talk us through.
No, in fact, I'll just get to the very bottom of it. I think for India, and if, you know, the chapter afterwards also, I'm sure you get into the community part, but we do not need to choose between the Western two systems. One system that gives the individual the premise and says you can pursue political and personal liberty at any cost. It's the liberal democratic capitalist model. The second is the socialist Marxist model, where the collective takes priority over the individual. In India, we've always had the individual and the collective in an interdependent relationship. So our model doesn't have to be one of these two. We can have our own model. And the people who wrote our constitution and who debated on it for so many days in the Constituent Assembly were very aware of it. And therefore, our constitution just does not have liberty and equality, but it also has fraternity. And that's so important, because it's the fraternity that ensures that liberty and equality run in balance, constitutionally speaking. But in this society, it is our family construct. You know, it is the way our families operate, the way our relationship is there with our community. Indians, as individualistic we are, you know, we like, everybody likes their filter coffee differently, everybody likes their own chart, you know, individualism is big, but at the same time we are also very anchored in the community you belong to. You know, community matters, where you come from matters, the village you come from matters. I'm sure there are villages and villages of Andhra Pradesh that have migrated to United States just because they came from the same village, right? So I'm just saying that we have that relationship. And we should not blindly follow what the West has set as a benchmark. We should have our own benchmark. We're the largest democracy in the world.
And the last chapter is something I think a lot of us are very passionate about, the power of community.
So I realized that, you know, we keep thinking about, we talked about this fraternity community, but I went to Mizoram. And Mizoram has an organization called the Young Mizo Association, where every Mizo above the age of 14 is part of that association. So 40 to 45% of Mizo population are part of the YMA. YMA then has this neighborhood little stalls which will make these announcements. Okay, people, get together for cleaning the street. Okay, people, so-and-so person has died, funeral needs to be arranged. Okay, people, you know, everywhere you go. I have never seen such a disciplined state. And they came up with that system because Christianity had come into the state, and they were worried that the old tribal Zungush system, which allowed for people to remain in a community, was fading. But YMA is also spiritually anchored. It has certain spiritual goals, not religious goals, spiritual goals, in terms of, you know, how should ideal society behave and what is the role of the individual in that society. And you know, at the other end of the country, you go back and you see the Indus civilization site of Dholavira, and it is 3500 BC. And they had water reservoirs, they had stadiums, they had, at the Dholavira side, you can see a stadium that can take 10,000 spectators, which means that to think about community living is not something that we got from somewhere. We knew how community living should happen, and we've been doing it for so many years. So the question is that how can that power of community be called to use for so much that we need to do? And I saw it during COVID. I'm sure most of us saw it. Buildings got together, neighborhoods got together, people got together to help each other. And as dark it was in terms of lack of delivery maybe on the government part, because there was no government in the world that could have prepared for delivery of something so big. But what is exciting and what is inspiring and uplifting is how communities banded together everywhere to help somebody, to take care of something, food, this, that. And I think the power of community that we have as a country is so huge. And that is what has allowed us to heal and move on so fast from something as big as once in a century pandemic.
So, by the way, I think we come to the close.
Yes.
We talked for last hour.
Yeah, he's like, enough time now, no time for anything else.
So before we go to questions, any closing thoughts? There is one question which I have to ask you. At T-Hub, so we are trying to be a hub for innovation, for entrepreneurship. In this, after reading this, I kept thinking, what is it that we can do to shape the future and to be able to drive these 12 superpowers? So I just thought, we have many of our entrepreneurs here and also some of my T-Hub team here. So is there anything you'd like to share with them?
I think I would say if we can ask that question, that apart from the goal and objective, what is the purpose that enterprise is trying to solve in society? If that lens can be brought in, I think it will make the startup and its journey far more holistic. It will allow it to deliver stakeholder capitalism and not just shareholder capitalism. So I would just say, if you just do that, everything else will just fall in line. I don't think we have time for questions. These two men are just saying like time, but maybe a couple of seconds. Okay, we have 1 year and then we have 1 year.
So what you've seen from setting the stage to innovation, how much premium we place on cultural heritage? I got a sense of that when I visited Rishikesh exactly this day, last week, Friday. And I was shocked to see the shambles in which the Beatles' ashram in Rishikesh was. Any sane person would have turned it into an international attraction given the popularity of Beatles. So your story actually alludes to a maxim that says everybody's culture is nobody's culture. And so someone has to take ownership of that. My question was, just as we speak, there is now at least the simmering evidence of the big tech meltdown, which will eventually lead, maybe in the next 1 year or so, a global meltdown of the kind that we've seen in 2008. Majority of the people here have not seen India before 2021. And you are struggling into it, 2.5%. Your book, I'm sure, sounds a very positive note. But I would like you to do some crystal ball gazing and help us understand one or two factors that will derail our journey to greatness.
Go ahead.
Why are you laughing?
I'll always leave the difficult questions to Bhairavi.
First of all, thank you so much, and please do let me know once you read the book what you think of it. I think I'm very sorry, but I'm an optimist. So even in the dark side, I see the positive side. That's just the DNA problem. But I think if there were two things that I think could derail us. One is that our inability as people to understand that governments of the day can come and go. It doesn't matter what party is ruling where. If we as people are not willing to pick up the oars and draft the republic, we will sink. Because if you take all the government jobs, you take all the public representatives, it's some 2 million people. 2 million people cannot build a nation of 1.4 million people. And you can outsource everything, but you cannot outsource nation today. No Nepali going to come and build this country for us. So I think that's the first thing and the most important thing that will derail us. I think the second thing that will derail us is that when we will start losing the sight of the power of fraternity that we have. We start focusing too much on the liberty and too much on equality in our policy formulations and in our way of life, and we construct reality parcels. Policy is very important because it sets standards, and standards create realities. So when we start setting standards that starts giving less and less importance to fraternity and starts taking away the idea that all three of them are equal pillars of what holds our structure together, I think we will be at significant risk of getting delayed. I hope that answers your question.
Hi, my name is Rajat and I'm closer.
Yeah, better.
So I'm into health and wellness, and I love your focus about health and wellness. And I really got connected to those examples because I was born and brought up in Shillong. And for the last 15 years, I've been doing my study in Indian superfood. So if you have another book on rediscovering Indian superfood, that will be amazing. The question that I have is, last year I spent 2 weeks in a village in Bihar, just trying to understand the crops that they are growing. And over a period of time, I have realized that earlier they used to grow crops like flaxseed, different kind of pulses. In Shillong, you had all those things are really superfood, right? Which some doctors in Harvard University they were talking to me about that. But the sad thing is most of those crops, right? They are being replaced by wheat. So they don't plant these crops with wheat. They are planting wheat and rice, which is affecting our health, and they are adding a lot of layers. So the nutrients of the soil is going down, and the variety of food is reducing. And that I feel is a very big problem. So when we are trying to promote what we have outside, we are losing what is much we grown. So I don't know what can be done. So what is your input on that? How do we solve that problem in a certain way? Because as startups we are trying to promote those food items, but farmers are not growing it as much as they should.
So she answer, pick up the book and read the chapter on power of food, but I will answer. Thank you for the passion, thank you for what you're doing. We have a diversity of plate, which initially is to also translate into the diversity of farm. And what we need to do and understand that a small farm can only be sustainable and can only be profitable if it is a diverse farm, right? Which means that it grows everything from millets and pulses and vegetables and fruits and other elements of what we used to consider traditional farming ecosystem. So you're right on there. How to do it? You have to go and talk to the farmers, and you have to make sure that what they're growing finds marketable value, because you can't go to church when you're hungry. The Hindi is bhuke but bhajan nahi hota. So you can't tell the guy to do something if he is not earning out of it, and you have to create a system for that. But once you give them a full idea that they can earn and there is predictable earning out of this, they will be the first to move away, because they know, if anything, they know what damage has happened. And they are willing to change as long as you have equipped them with the knowledge and processes and ecosystem that prepares them for that shift. We don't want to go Sri Lanka, right? So we have to be careful of that. There's one at the back. One lady here. I think first we will be 2 ladies. Yeah, lady and yeah, you.
Hello, good evening everyone. I am Monica from Degree College. So I have one question. Actually, recently I published one Indian patent on artificial intelligence in agriculture field. So here my house is farmers and I have discussed with my helping try to use the technology, but they are not agree with the process. It is very useful in that. How can we try that people think this feel like they take benefit, we will not take benefit. So how can we develop build trust with other person? Like it is a boat and it will support us too.
Thank you. So you know the year Gandhi went walking on Dandi March. Does anybody know which year it was?
I can answer.
Which year?
1931.
1931. By then he was a big hero already, okay? But still the man had to walk those 130 kilometers, go and make the salt on his own for the rest of the country to follow. So the only way you can build trust is that you do it yourself. And I've done it. I've gone back to the mountains in Himalaya. I've gone and planted biodiverse trees. When they see you do that, and you must have that patience then, they will follow because they will see something good is working, but you have to go and do that. You can go and do it and take a small farm on lease. In rural areas they come very cheap. You can go and prototype, show it to people. And once you have walked the talk, they walk with you. But first you got to walk your talk. I think we have one question. There's a lady behind, and then first sir. No, please go ahead. Go ahead.
We just wanted to know the idea behind the highway to Swades and how our Indian cultural heritage legacy will be with the greatest power. As we are concerned, only China, US also was. So with a great effort in traveling all India and contribution is going to help our motherland India become a soft power. So these two questions.
So you were the cause behind this.
What is the first question?
Highway to Swades, the title of the book.
Okay.
And second, the contribution of traveling all over India and collecting the intrinsic cultural heritage is going to make India another superpower. So what as a present ecosystem should do?
How travel, yeah, okay. I think what you don't know, you can't work with. So I realized that a lot of, in 2004 itself, when I had that moment in the Ganga, I realized that I didn't know India at all. And that for me to know India, I had to travel, meet people, interact, understand, unlearn, learn. So I think what travel does is allows you to understand better, create much better understanding. I think I have much better understanding of who I am as an Indian, what India is because of these 2 decades of travel. So that's first. And I think second is, of course, that what can we do? I don't care what the Chinese and the Americans said. That's their problem. How is my problem? I am only focused on the 140 crore people. And I am focused on what strengths they have, what opportunities they have, and what we can do as a country. What others do is their problem. We need to focus on what we can do. I think when we become that purpose-oriented, we were able to drive the biggest empire in the world because we became purpose-oriented. We brought our strengths together, we banded together, and we told them get up without firing one bullet. So I think we are capable of so much more if we understand who we are, what we have to do, and where we have to go. That's all is needed. That's why I asked the question, what does it mean? I would hope that all of you go back today and ask yourself this question to yourself as an Indian. Because as an Indian, we're all equal. It doesn't matter where we come from, what we speak, who we pray to, and what we eat at home. In the 21st century, what does it mean to you to be an Indian? When you can answer that, because I have that answer, right? Once you find that answer for yourself, there will be no confusion, I guarantee. That's my own personal experience. I think we have one last question and then we should wrap up.
Hello ma'am, I'm Rishika. So I wanted to ask you something that you mentioned, that we should go back to our old way of life, we should be in connect with the nature once again. But don't you think that way of life, although very good and sustainable, would take us a step back globally?
Actually, so I think you'd have to read the whole chapter factor to understand what I mean by going back. I don't mean going back and living in the jungle anymore. What I mean is that we have to understand that we for many eons had an interdependent relationship with our natural world. We understood that we shaped our natural world and our natural world shaped us. And in understanding that equation and bringing that back alive, that thinking, that understanding, not going back and living in the forest and but bringing back that understanding that we are an integral part of our natural world, we shape it and so does it shape us. And without that natural world, our survival is bleak. That in scientific reports demonstrate. So, if we bring back that thinking, then the way we live will become more mindful of our natural world, more nurturing of our natural world, and our relationship will be less in conflict with our natural world. So that's what I mean by that. Okay, we still have one question. Last question.
Okay, this has to be
last. Has to be the last.
Hello, my name is Shisham.
Hold it.
My name is Shisham. I have a small question to both of you. I'm a researcher. My question is on.
Can't hear you.
Okay?
Yeah, now.
That's okay. My question is for both of you. In this of my research from 2014, the most of the research was on sustainability and supply chain. In the rapid case in 2018, most of the research has been shifted to life cycle analysis. In your view, like in traveling or in the experience of yours, what's your view of understanding the Indian people with an industrial point of view?
What is the last part?
The Indian people with an industrial point of view.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
To have a good entrepreneur, you should have an understanding of present cultural diversity with a different ecosystem of understanding the nature and the community which are overall in India.
I'll answer that very simply as an entrepreneur myself, and so can MSR. All you need as an entrepreneur is to be able to identify an opportunity or a gap in the market, your ability to innovatively in a way when you add value to provide it to the market at a price point that the market can afford. That is what a good enterprise does. You want to become a great enterprise, then you're going to have to go beyond that and create a certain purpose, a larger purpose for your existence that goes beyond meeting just the demand of the market, but it has the objective of shaping the market, shaping the closing dimension of society. That's when you become a great enterprise. And you become a phenomenally great company when you take all of that and share the value that you created, not just with your shareholders, but also with society, community, and people at large. That's all there is an answer to it. I think we will close on that count. Today is a very special day for me. I've been doing these conversations across the country, but today there would have been a wonderful person here with me today, and she's not here. The book starts with her. It's my dear close friend Suna. She was a PhD in public health. She understood technology, she understood wellness, she had a PhD from John Hopkins, but a great belief in India's natural sciences. She was culturally aware, she could recite Upanishads backwards, forwards, but at the same time she could do coding and write modern code and modern reports and transcribing for medical reports of genome science. I mean, this was a person who truly existed at the confluence of civilization and republic. Without her, my journey in life would have been incomplete. On 26th of October, she, just when the book was about to come out, she left this world. She's left a void in my heart, and I just want to show you a little clip about her. It's a few seconds, and I am honored and truly glad that her brother-in-law Dakshinamurti and her son Shankar are here today with us. So I think after the clip, I'm going to call Shankar over and we're all going to, she would have unveiled the book today, and so in her place, along with us, Shankar is going to do the honors, but can we have the please?
I would quickly read the 12 superpowers that Bhairavi has mentioned. Power of enterprise, power of nature, power of heritage, creativity, knowledge, food, beauty, wellness, power of assimilation, power of inclusion, power of individual, power of community. I represent a power, a magical power that gives us access to all these powers. The power of reading. I'm an independent bookseller from Jaipur, and I'm really honored with the opportunity of curating. I've come all the way from Jaipur to curate this event. Thanks to MSR sir for giving me the platform of presenting a book all over again, and thank you Bhairavi for putting in the effort. I want to highlight one thing. I want to ask you, which shelf should I put it? Is it policy? Is it thought-provoking? Is it inspiration? Is it travel? Because today I had an opportunity of going around Hyderabad. She incidentally mentions that in a chapter of inclusivity. One thing which I really learned and loved about this city was there's a culture and there is development. And the inclusivity of this city is so beautiful where both these things come together. So I congratulate you on inspiring me and everybody who reads the book. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone. Thank you Praveen. Could you please have Praveen and
Shankar. Before I just want to take this opportunity to thank you, MSR, for being such a wonderful host, and Praveen and Mohit, please, both of you. I want to thank you for everything that you've done, for having the faith, even without knowing the book, to go ahead and do it. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank all the wonderful T-Hub, all the wonderful T-Hub people who have come here today and also supporting us. And I want to recognize my wonderful team from Ants Digital, who also all the way traveled here from Gurgaon to support in this event. So thank you everyone. As I said,